Welcome to Archery Talk 101 podcast, your guide to better archery skills. We'll bring you the latest tips, tricks, and expert advice, but that's not all. We'll also have interviews with top archers and industry professionals and reviews of the latest gear and equipment and much more. So what's it like to shoot at the Olympic level and world level? We're going to find out today on Archery Talk 101. My name is Roy, and I'm going to be your host today. And we have John on the line with us, and we're going to talk about archery at the higher level and what it takes to get there and what it takes to stay there. Welcome to the show, John.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Can you introduce yourself and tell our audience a little something about you?
Yeah, sure. My name's John Walker. I'm a double Paralympic gold medalist from Rio. I've been doing archery since 2012 when I was inspired by a chap called Matt Stutzman. He was on the American team when he was shot in London. And I decided to take up archery for, if he can do it without any arms, I've got to be able to do it one-handed. And that's where my archery career started. And then back in 2017, I went from world ranked 96, world ranked number 5 in 2017 after Rio, because I saw that W1 was going to be out of the category. So in the World Championships in China, me and Phoebe won the bronze medal, and within 3 months I was world ranked number 5. So it's pretty awesome statistics from me. But then unfortunately, in 2018, I ended up retiring from archery completely because I had an injury that I couldn't sustain. Can see me staying at the top in archery, so I decided to retire. I then shot in Paralympic rifle and pistol, and when I was doing pistol, I actually discovered that there was a way back for me to get back to archery. So that started at the end of 2022, and then I had my first season at the beginning of last year. And since I've been out with archery, I actually started wearing glasses, and I didn't see any cause any problems with archery, but it did.
Yeah, they can.
Because I have to wear varifocals, and what I discovered is that with varifocals, when you're trying to shoot, depending on which part of the lens you're looking through, depends where your arrow hits inside the target, which was an absolute shock. So I ended up going back to single prescription lenses in another pair of glasses that I've had, and that solved the problem. Because the glasses are nice and slim, so I can still see out underneath. That my release aid is in a D-loop properly. So I solved that issue. And the other thing was, back when I was doing archery, there was no back tension wrist release available at all. So I started to shoot the new Trouble extension, and was spraying with that a little bit, and I was all right shooting indoors with it. But as soon as I shot outside, it just didn't perform for me at all. I just struggled getting the arrows off. And for target archery, that just didn't work.
Oh, that would.
So I had a word with Benjamin Summers, because of Summers own and run Trouble archery and Excel. And he told me about the sense line, but at the time was unavailable in the UK. But I managed to pick up a couple of them, and I shot with that. That was okay. Because unfortunately, in England last year, the weather here was absolutely atrocious, very windy, very wet. So for me shooting with a shoulder harness, I couldn't tell whether I had any alignment issues with my harness at all. I just thought it was just the wind. I didn't think it was me. But unfortunately, when it comes to the good weather in the season, which didn't come until September here in the UK, I found myself chasing my tail because I all of a sudden realised I had an issue with my release aid. Because I was shooting the new TRX38G2, which when I competed in China in 2017, I was shooting the Matthews 8. 14-inch axle to axle bow, and that bow performed really, really well for me, apart from didn't like being out of tune. So when I come back, I picked up the new cam that they have on their bow, and it was a lot more aggressive, so it's much harder to draw with one arm. And I was finding I was having to drop my poundage down from 60 down to 56 in order to draw the bow. But what I discovered, because the valley was so long, I couldn't tell I was coming off the back wall. and with the hook release facing in towards my face. So what I discovered was, if I didn't continue that pressure on the back wall, it allowed the release aid to find its easiest path, which was away from my face, and that was fishtailing the back of my arrows, which was absolutely no good whatsoever. I couldn't keep up the consistency for the second half of 36 arrows. So I went back and come home, and I picked out my old release aid that I always used to shoot, the Center X from True Ball. They don't make it anymore, and I was quite lucky. I got 7 of them, so I picked one of those up, and because that one, the hook's actually away from the archer's face. So actually, when that releases, it keeps that release aid in contact with the face for a couple of milliseconds until the arrow is gone. So it couldn't fishtail the back of the arrow, and then my accuracy come back. And well, by that time it was too late. I couldn't get the points I needed to get into the section shoot to go to Paris this year. But also Matthews then brought out their new title bow, which is what I'm here to talk about, because I've shot nearly all of Matthews' bows, from the Conquest right through the TRG through the TRX. But when I was actually competing in W1 in 2016, I was shooting a PSE back then, and I've also shot Hoyt bows as well. So I've had quite a lot of experience shooting different manufacturers. But the only thing I didn't like about Hoyt is I couldn't paper tune it, and because I'm an engineer, that played with my head a little bit.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the confidence in the equipment, and the PSE gave me the confidence that the Hoyt didn't. But the only thing I didn't like about the outward facing limbs is that the bow just wants to fly out of your hand, and I found it not giving a positive field feedback to me as an archer, which I did get from the TRX when I went to the TRX8 in 2017. That bow performed extremely well for me. Just the only flaw that I found with the TRX8 is that it didn't like being out of tune. If it went out slightly out of tune, it just would not shoot at all. When it was on song, it was on song, and it shot extremely well. And the valley was very, very short. So if you come off the back wall, you knew about it. The bow would just kind of try and snatch back towards you.
Yeah.
So then I shot the TRX 38 G2, and the only problem I found with that bow was the valley was just too long. I wasn't getting the feedback from the bow that I needed as a competition archer. Would have been fine for hunting, but it just wasn't going to cut it for target archery. And then they brought out the title. I tested that at the indoors national series here in the UK. I was shooting my TRX 40 in competition there, but I tested the new title and I was absolutely amazed with it. The draw cycle still takes a little bit of getting used to. It was a little bit easier to draw than the TRX 38 G2, which is what I preferred, a little bit easier to draw, which means I'm back up to 58-pound draw weight. That didn't cause my shoulder any problems whatsoever now, shooting that bow, but it's the feedback that bow gives you back. It's just super stable. It does where your sight ends up, that's where your arrow lands. So as a competition archer, it just gives you so much confidence shot after shot, and there's zero vibration in the bow whatsoever. So I can just imagine what their new lift hunting bow shoots like. That shoots like phenomenally as well as the title does. And I've been in contact with Matthews because the only flaw that bow has is it hasn't got a thumb screw for the sight in the bridge lock system, and which is something I hope that they will correct, so that any person that travels, it's easy for them to take the sight in and out of the bow without any tools. At the moment, you have to use a 1/8 Allen key to take it out, and that's the only flaw I find with it. It's the best bow that I've ever shot in my career. I can't see how Matthews can make it any better. I'm just so looking forward to getting their bridge lock stabilized system to take that bow to the next level, because the amount of feel that would actually give would improve the bow even more.
Yeah, getting the bow set up is definitely a lot more challenging nowadays than it used to be. It used to be there wasn't really much, and yeah, a lot of vibration because the limbs are kind of pretty much straight up and down, and
Yeah,
you know, you deal with the vibration and you just do all kinds of things to stop the vibration, and you know, I have a sling on my bow because you know it'll jump forward when it hits my fingers. Uh,
yeah,
you know, I have a sling when I'm hunting. If I'm shooting at a deer out of a tree stand and I don't have a sling on, my bow's on the ground. I hang on to it. And
yeah, yeah,
and the new ones now, you know, if you're target shooting, you wouldn't have to hang on to it. They're just so smooth and they don't jump forward because the force isn't going forward. It's going more up and down and counteracts itself. So that's
yeah.
definitely going to make them a little smoother shooting bows.
Yeah, the parallel bows, for me, for target archery, just make perfect sense because then when the shot goes off, everything just moves in a dead straight line. Also, the other thing I found with Matthew's new bow, you do not need as much stabilization weight on it neither, because I shoot with Mantis is what I train with, and I can actually see how much of a straighter line that bow actually moves in towards the target. That's what all your stabilizers are there for. They're not there for the archer, as you see a lot of competition archers shooting with an awful lot of weight on their bow. That's not what the stabilizers are there for. They're there for the bow to make sure that it moves in a straight line to the target up on release. Is what these stabilizers are actually there for.
Yeah, it just helps keep it from moving, keeps it going in this, you know, the right direction. And you see people
Absolutely.
have great big go long 3 foot, 4 foot long stabilizer, and they got two more stabilizers that are a foot or so long on the back because it's so
Yeah.
heavy, and it's like that's an awful lot of weight. I shoot hunting setups. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mostly hunt, so I'm shooting my hunting setup, and you know, I'll have to go through. I've got the bow I use for, you know, more of my target and 3D stuff, and I just had a little short stabilizer. I just stuck something on there. I didn't really analyze it or nothing. I just threw it together, and that's what I shot it. You know, when I do 3Ds and targets and stuff. And
Yeah.
hunting bow is well, my hunting bow is a 2001 PSE, and the other bow is a 2003 PSE. I do have
Also,
a bear that's about 2015 that I haven't even set up yet. I got a good deal on it. Um,
yeah.
I had to make a string and fix string you know, the string dampener, but hey, other than that, it just sits downstairs right now. I haven't bothered setting it up. It's in a snow camo.
Yeah. This is the only thing that makes the Matthews the phase 4 that come out last year and this year the boy out the left, and the title's the same. It's actually got 8 limbs, and you've got a rubber membrane in between the limbs and they're parallel limbs. And there's zero noise from it. The only noise you hear is your release A going off. There's zero noise from the bow completely. It is phenomenal what Matthews have done.
Yeah.
And I'm not a factory pro staff with Matthews. I am a European sponsored archer from Matthews, but I have to buy my own kit. All I get is a discount through Clickers Archery here in the UK because they're their main dealer here in the UK. And I've actually spent about £4,000 on the new bow and the stabilizer setup that they brought out. Initially, I wasn't going to buy the Bridgelock stabilizers, but since shooting a bow, I can actually see the advantage of what they have because as their stabilizer system, again, there's nothing out there like it on the market because it no longer screws into your riser, so you have no ferrules at the end of the bars whatsoever. It's made out of a solid machined piece of carbon fiber, and they've machined the inside of it out so the wind can pass through it. It's not round anymore; it's square. But the good thing with that is there's no ferrule on the end. So all you do is you put it straight through the bridge lock in the riser of the bow, and then you just clamp it straight into the riser. So actually, it's in there solidly. It's the most solid connection you can possibly have. So all the weight of your stabilizer is where you want it, right on the end of the stabilizer. So it should work in a lot more efficient way.
Yeah. Yeah. The advancements in archery are just amazing what they're doing now. Um, it's just amazing what technology they've developed since you know, since the 70s when the first compound was really available. I think
Yeah,
late 60s was the first time I designed one, but it wasn't until the mid 70s before you could really buy it, find them anywhere. And the old Bear
Yeah.
Whitetail 2 is the first compound I shot. And yeah, that's an old, old bow and old design and cables and
Yeah.
yeah, the whole kinds of different cables and stuff on it. And yeah,
Yeah, because
now
they used to use
it's all
wire back then, didn't
advancement.
they? They used to use wire on the very first compound bows that would normally be used in lifting, if I remember rightly. The old steel cables. I
Yeah,
just to think what it'd be like if one of those snapped. There wasn't much left of the bows back then.
no, no, they sure wasn't. It's really advanced in it, and it's nice that that at the level you're shooting at, you can tell a little difference between one part and another part. And
Yeah,
I know new archers, just getting your first bow, I wouldn't recommend getting something like that because they wouldn't know the difference.
exactly.
Spend the money until you can tell the difference. Start
Yeah,
with something inexpensive, get started. That's
yeah,
what I always told all my archers that, come to my store when I had my store, I'd start out with them, I was a PSC dealer and
yeah,
I stocked a lot of the Nova bows because at that time they had three different lengths and then I'd stock two in the right and one in the left in each of different sizes. And that's why 40% of my bows the last year I had my store were left-handed because I
yeah.
stocked
And plus, you want a bow that's fully adjustable as well when you first start, because you're not too sure what draw length you're going to be, what draw weight you're able to cope with to shoot with. So you just need a bow that's super easy to adjust.
Yeah,
Um,
now, in the last few years, they've got bows that are really adjustable. Anywhere from, small kid to adult can shoot them. They adjust,
yeah,
and as you adjust the draw length up, the minimum weight goes up as well. And there's just so many options out there now to get a
yeah,
bow that will fit you that you can grow with. And then once you grow past that, then you can look at, okay, let's get a better sight. Swap out
yeah,
a better sight. Let's get a better rest. I always recommend getting the best quality release you can to start with.
yeah,
Buy a cheap bow, buy cheap arrows, cheap sight, get the cheapest that you can, but spend your
yeah,
money on a release because
yeah,
it's going to determine how well you shoot.
yeah. Well, when I very first started archery, I used to shoot with Carter wrist release aids, and they would not last. They would just blow up on me. And then when I switched to True Ball, and that's one of the reasons why I've stuck with True Ball, they're so well made, and I've not damaged one. They're still in as good condition as when I first had them, just because of the materials that they use in it. I used to have a Carter one that had magnets in it, and I just smashed the magnets to pieces inside. It just couldn't cope with the amount that I shoot. If you're doing hunting, it would be absolutely fine because you don't shoot a large volume of arrows. I'm shooting up to 108 arrows a day. And I think since last year, I've actually shot over 12,000 arrows.
There's a lot of arrows to shoot.
Yeah, yeah. But that's how much when you get towards my level of competition as a pro athlete, that's what you got to do. You got to work harder than the rest to become the best,
Right.
and to try and stay there. And that's a really hard thing to do. And that's one of the things with the bows that I shoot with Matthews. You have to know what module that you need with the let off that you want and for the poundage, because for the first time with the title, you don't change a limb anymore on the title. You have to get a module so you can go from 70, 65, 60, 55, 50 without changing limbs on the bow. They just changed the module. So
Yeah.
I'm shooting with a 29.5 inch draw and 60 pound with 75% let off is the setup that I've gone through for, and it suits me down to the ground. But that's why I don't really recommend the Matthews bows to any new beginner out there, because you just do not know what you want or what you need from draw length, let off, what feels comfortable for you in your hand. It's taken me quite a number of years to get the feel that I have for the shot that I have now. And when you see the likes of Stefan Hansen, since he's had the title in his hands, he's shooting perfect scores. It's back to his old self that it was with PSE, and he's out in Nîmes, and I think he's one of the only ones so far to shoot a perfect round out in Nîmes. So the finals will be this weekend. So I really hope that he can get through and hopefully win with his Matthews bow.
Yeah. Now you say you're shooting the title. Are you shooting the title 36 or 38?
I'm shooting the 38. I've gone again, depending on what length or draw length you have, depends on what axle will suit you better. It's all just do with the string angle, and for obviously the longer the axle to axle, the more stable potentially the bow is. Because I experimented this year. Last year I had the TRX 38 and I also had the TRX 40. And I didn't actually find that much difference in the stability between the two, because you're only talking 2 inches. But it was the string angle that I preferred on the TRX 38, so I've stuck with a 38 bow, because I'm sure they're going to bring out in 2025 the title 40. I'm sure they will bring out a version of that in the 40-inch axle to axle. But I actually prefer the 38. I don't really notice too much difference in the stability of it, but it's the string angle for me. It just sits better on my face. It gives me a nice and crisp angle from my nose. So I actually shoot with a nose kisser, which I find a lot more accurate to shoot and line up with my peak, because your nose is a bit more sensitive than the mouth kisser,
right?
The corner of your mouth. So it's just finding out what you prefer as as an archer, and just working with it until you get the confidence up to take the next step up and get the next best setup you can possibly get. But for all those archers that do shoot at a higher level, I can tell you that nothing shoots like the title bow. There's nothing out there on the market like it. Most of the archery shops that stock them abroad, and they test them themselves, are all on YouTube. If you put in Matthews title 38, you'll see a whole load of different people giving you all sorts of feedback, and they'll all say the same thing. The title is the best bow on the market at this precise moment in time, even though it's very expensive.
Yeah, I actually brought up the Matthews website and got the title. Let me go ahead and for those who are talking about, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can take a look at the bow. Here's the title 38, a little bit of information about it. Comes in multiple different colors, black and a white, a mint. They call it an optic yellow, a red, kind of a lime green, and a blue. Or it says a deep teal.
Yeah, I'm shooting the mint green bow. That's a matte green. A friend of mine's got the neon green. That's a very nice color too. And the red is actually like a chrome red.
Yeah.
So it's extremely shiny. And plus, the other thing that they've done in their bow is on the bottom there. You see that bit of brass on the very bottom of the bow there?
Right there.
That's actually 8 ounces of weight, which you can remove. But it's just there to so the weight's in front of the hand and low down, so it's a low center of gravity, and it just works so well. I know some archers would choose to remove it so they get a lot lighter bow, because the other thing Matthews has done is exactly the same as the title this year. They've removed so much material from the riser. It's the lightest bow that Matthews could ever make as a hunting and a target bow. There's not much meat left on there at all.
No,
and the limbs are even shorter than the TRX, and they're a lot wider as well. So on the title, you actually get far more stability from the extra wide pockets on the limbs themselves.
Yeah, as it looks like it's just like a honeycomb where they've removed everything that they could possibly remove out of that riser. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense having a little extra weight at the bottom, because you have your rest and your sight at the top.
Yeah.
So it's going to add weight up there. Then I see on that one they're using a floating Y cable on them.
Yeah, they've gone back to the yoke system fully on the target bow. Before it was off to the side on the cam, but I'm glad they've gone back to the double yoke, because it means then the limbs are then being pulled parallel each time you draw the bow back. which I'm really pleased they've gone back to that system on the title. And also the axles are on top of the limbs, they're not through the limb, they're actually bolted on top of the limb. So the actual back of the limbs themselves are extremely thin. So unfortunately, their bow stand that they do actually doesn't fit in there very tightly. And what I've actually done on mine, I put some loop Velcro on there to close up the gap so it doesn't fall off my bow because the limbs are that much thinner. But the other thing that Matthews also changed is their strings. So they used to be called zebra,
Right.
and they've now gone to what they're calling matched strings and cables. And what they've done, they've actually made their own machines to actually make their strings and cables now. And I can swear and say that there's zero stretch, there's zero rotation from the peak. My string and cable have not moved since I've shot the bow, and I've shot a couple of thousand arrows for each one of my title bows now, and they haven't moved since I've shot them, and the bow poundage hasn't shifted neither, so there's no stretch at all in those cable and strings anymore, and they come from the factory like that, so there's no need to put on a third party cable and string set on there. You're actually wasting your money and your time really in doing that. Their new strings and cables are that good.
Yeah, I know that was a thing in the past. I know when 20 years ago, I would get the strings in and on the higher end bows, one of my shooters, he wouldn't even shoot the bow until I made him a new string because they'd never quit rotating. They just constantly moving, and they make a cheap string, and because they're making thousands of them, and save a little bit of money, and me, I'd rather pay a little bit more for the bow and make a quality bowstring. And there for a while PSC was using the winner's choice on some of the higher end bows, but the other ones were just whatever's the cheapest material, I think.
They've also worked closely with BCY as well to come up with a unique material for themselves, so there's hardly any wax on these strings and cables. And it's super material. It doesn't fluff up like the old strings and cables do. There's zero fluff in there whatsoever. And actually, if you look up on YouTube, you'll actually see the manufacturing process that they do on their cables and strings, and the machine that they actually use to make them with. It's all computerized, so every single string and cable is identical when it comes off. It's just a phenomenal system that they've developed themselves. And I'm just glad that they've taken their bow manufacturing to the next level. I mean, I can't see personally how they can make anything any better, to be honest.
Yeah, they'll find a way to make something better. All your bow manufacturers are constantly looking at developing new and better. And if you don't, you're going to fall behind. And next thing you know, nobody's buying your bows and you're out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that Elsa liked about Matthews, unlike Hoyt, who are mainly in it to sell you a bow. They bring out new bows every year. Whereas Matthews don't do that. They only bring out a new bow when they've made huge progress in what they think will be a better bow. And also they're the only, as a sponsored archer, as long as I'm shooting a Matthews bow, they don't care what model I shoot, as long as it's a Matthews bow. Whereas with Hoyt, and I can remember Sarah, who's well ranked number 2 at the moment, she had Hoyt bows. That's who she's sponsored with. That's all she's ever shot. And Hoyt actually made her shoot the latest Hoyt bow, which she didn't like at all. She couldn't get on with it. But that's just the difference between different bow manufacturers. It's one of the reasons why I personally don't like Hoyt, is in that's what they do. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I just like to be able to shoot as a target archer the best bow I can possibly shoot to win me medals, and also to help promote their own equipment. And archery, target archery is not like hunting at the end of the day. We're there to try and hit the high scores, so that equipment's got to work for you. If it doesn't, and you've got things on there that are slight gimmicks, it just doesn't work. But
Yeah.
then again, Matthews, again, with the hunting bows, they've not really produced what I would class as a bad bow. Especially when we watched Joe's story. I mean, I didn't actually realise that he worked for Matthews until I actually watched his Joey on the Joe Perry project on YouTube, and I'm recommending anybody to watch that because it's absolutely awesome for hunting and what he puts his bows through.
Yeah. Put them through the paces, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah,
When I had my store, Hoyt seemed to come out with a new bow every year. So you buy
yeah,
a bow, and next year it's a used. You have to sell it as a year-old bow.
yeah,
PSC, they changed bows every year, but they changed their main line every other year, and then the pro line
yeah,
every other year. So I buy a pro series bow 1 year, I got 2 years to sell it as a new bow. I don't have to
yeah,
buy a new one. Now I don't have a year-old bow that I can't sell at the full price. And
yeah,
that's what I like. And they changed, the pro line every other year. And so each year they're putting out something new, but it wasn't always
yeah,
the same. You got 2 years to sell them. And
yeah,
it's something like the Nova bow, they had that out for many, many years.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just one of the things that again I admire with Matthews, that they don't tend to do that. Um, yeah, the Phase 4 was the very first bow that they brought out with the 8 limbs, so I suppose that was their trial to see how well it would work and whether people would actually buy the bow. And they brought out the lift. And the thing that's remarkable with the lift as a hunting bow is that it's actually lighter than a carbon fiber bow.
Oh, yeah.
They've machined that much material away from the riser, and the riser, if you look between the title and the lift, they look very, very similar. Apart from obviously the lift is a lot smaller axle to axle. They do a 29.5 and a 33 in that particular bow. And plus, you can also change the cable and strings in the field with their SAS system, which is absolutely awesome. And I've done it exactly the same with the title. I've got the SAS cable for my bow. So for the first time, if I have a slight timing issue with one of my cables, I can quickly just put that on, just take out 4 turns out of each limb. And I can put the SAS cable on there and quickly adjust one of the cables. Um, it's just a phenomenal thing to have without having to have a bow press with you. It's a super smart system, really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, almost like the old teardrop ones where you could put a loop on either side, and to put a new string on, you drop back a little bit, stick the new one on, let it down, draw the new one, take the old one off. A little
Yeah,
quick change. And you have to
absolutely.
have a bow press for it. And that's kind of
Yeah,
nice that I hadn't heard that you can do that. And that's on which bow?
they do it. It started on the Phase 4 from the 2023 bow, and on the lift, that has a SAS system, and so does the title. It's the first competition bow that they've done. They can utilize the SAS cable, so they actually make a cable specifically for it.
Yeah, it's going to look the Phase 4 we're talking about. Let's go ahead and show everybody the Phase 4. Here's the Phase 4 in 29-inch. And you say you can just take some turns out of it and change the string then?
Yeah, so you take 4 turns out of the limbs, and if you look into the inside the cams, you see it's got little hooks actually inside the cam where you attach the SAS cable onto, and all you do is just literally pull on one of the cables to draw that cam in, and just hook the cable on, and it's done. And you can actually use it to actually change the string out completely.
Huh. That's kind of an interesting design. See, looks like little hooks right here. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they've actually put in there, so you can actually use the SAS cable in the field to quickly make adjustments to your bow.
Well,
So
that's an
wherever you,
interesting concept. I didn't realize they had a bow that you could do that with.
yeah, yeah, and also with their the new lift, the only difference between the lift and that bow is just there's more machined from out the riser.
Here's the lift.
Yeah,
pretty fast speeds on that bow.
Yeah, they're not. It's not a slow bow at all, and it's just so quiet that if you watch anyone on YouTube shooting one, all you can actually hear is the release going off. There is zero vibration in that bow whatsoever. It's just a phenomenal what Matthews have been able to do. And plus, the other interesting thing is with them is with the cable stay that they've got coming down. That actually is in set, so it's in the middle of the string, so you've got maximum clearance for your arrow. Those cables just nicely out of the path of your arrow fletchings.
Yeah, it looks like they've got them pulled back over here where you have clearance.
Yeah, they've done exactly the same thing with the title target bow as well, so that when we're shooting our indoor setups, the fletchings have got plenty of clearance to get through.
Well, yeah, learn about some of the new bows. I'm kind of afraid to go shooting new bows because then I'm going to want to buy it, and I don't want to buy a new bow. So I know if I go shoot one, it's going to be like, oh man, this is nice. I want to shoot this one, and
yeah,
then I would have to buy a new bow, and really don't want to do that right now.
I'm just just amazed with the technology that they brought out, because no other manufacturers, as far as I can see, are anywhere close to where Matthews are at the precise moment in time. They're the first people to come up with that technology. Was that the same as PSE with their multiple module? Without having any modules, you got an infinite amount of adjustment inside the cam itself.
Yeah,
and they've got that patented, so everybody else has to pay them royalties to be able to use their system. And I think that's one. Well, the other reason why Matthews used their system they use on their bows, so you have to buy the module itself to go on, is so that they've got the max, so they get the maximal efficiency from out of the bow for your draw length, is what Matthews say. So rather than having something that is in between, so depending what draw length you are, you might have a little bit less performance out of the bow than you would have out of somebody who had a different draw length to you. What Matthews actually say is they've got the optimal setup for any draw length that you can shoot.
Yeah, I know. The first Matthews I bought was the Q2, back over 20 years ago. And you had to know what your draw length was. Because you get it there, the modules come in half-inch increments, if I remember right. And you had maybe about a quarter of an inch adjustment you could do with it. So if you're 29 and a half, you order 29 and a half modules. If you're 29, you order 29-inch modules. And and if you sell the bow to somebody else, if they're not that length, they got to buy new cams.
Yeah, or if you shot the Conquest 4, you actually have to change the bottom cam on that particular bow in order to get the correct draw length. It's actually done on the cam itself. But Matthews have stuck to their module system right through their range. It's just that this time is the first time round, whereas on the lift and on the title bow, the limbs remain the same up to 70 pounds. I think on the actual lift actually goes up to 80 pounds. So what you do is so if you are shooting in one particular area where they said you've got to have the maximum bow poundage of say 70 pounds, all you need to do is have a 70-pound module, and that just drops it down from 80 straight down to 70.
Oh, that's interesting. Instead of cranking the limbs in and out.
Yeah, just literally just have to change the module now, whereas before you've had to change all the limbs and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah.
But now on their bows you don't have to do that. You just have to buy modules. So for someone that hunts, it just makes perfect sense. So if you want to shoot 3D with it, you don't want that amount of poundage that you want to hunt with, then you can just drop it straight down to 60, 65 pounds just by changing the module. It's such a good system in that respect.
Now, do you need a bow press to change the module, or is it something you can change?
It's something you can change yourself without any need of any bow press or anything. You just need an Allen key just to undo them. It's just a simple system that Matthews have used, so it just makes perfect sense. If you shooting multiple disciplines. But it's like for with the title, for instance, and if I wanted to come over to America and shoot in the ATA, and I could get away with 70 pounds, all I have to do is just swap the module over, and I'm straight up to 70 pounds from 60. It's just for a multiple discipline competitions, it just makes perfect sense.
Now, are they adjustable? So, say like you want to shoot 68 pounds, or is it just whatever the module is for?
Just whatever the module's for, but you still can undo your limb bolts. So you can still go from a range, say from 55 up to 60. That 60-pound module will go right down to 55. You don't need a 55-pound module to be able to do that. So you still got that very adjustability in it. It's just from the big poundages, you can just drop down by 5 or 10 pounds.
That's actually pretty nice that you can still crank the limbs out a little bit and still be able to change them. I know in the older bows it was like 4 turns is all you could turn them out.
Yeah.
And you don't want to turn them out more than that. On some bows, I know you could turn them out a little bit more if I needed to. But back then you had the old limb pockets. You had to have a certain amount of the limb below the limb pocket edge. Otherwise they'd turn. And I had one kid come in one time and he had cranked them out too far and it kind of twisted on the limb a little bit. Took it to one of their shops, they fixed it, they brought it in me because he did it again. And so I was like, well, step back, I put this in the press and I fixed it and cranked it to the minimum. And back then I was charging $20 for press time. And I told the kid, it's like, this time is $20, next time is 40.
Yeah.
To do it, and $20 for stupid fee for doing what you were told before and told again not to do. I just laughed. But get the point across. Like, okay, you were told by the other shop you can't crank them out anymore. And there's other things you can do to a bow that you can reduce them down. Changing the cable length, changing string length. Changing
absolutely
gets them in where they can pull it back. It's worth not having that perfect tune. Because they don't know any better anyway. So I've done that too, made different length strings and cables and, got the poundage down. I had to do that for my daughter because she couldn't pull them. I had 50-pound limbs and she still down to 40, still couldn't pull them. So, I'd change strings and cables and, because when I had my store, I went down to PSE and learned how to make strings. And then, I made lots of strings. I use BCY's 8125. String material. That's all I make my strings out of. I'm not using the newer stuff because I got so much of the other stuff. I see no reason to buy a new roll of a different material.
I understand that.
I got I think probably about 12 or 15 different colors. In that, and also in the B500, which is for the recurves, because I'd make strings for recurves and stuff. So I'd have all those and make them. So it's kind of fun because you can custom make them and everything else and different designs and different patterns and
the only thing I really change on the titles is I like to take off their center serving because I like to shoot with a different BCY material to what they use. They do one called grip. So, and it has zero wear when I'm continuously knocking my arrows. So I make sure that it's the correct fit that I like to have on my knocks. So I just make them specifically for the way I like to shoot. And that's the only thing I change is just the center serving. That's it. To the BCY Super Grip, I think they call it. It's just got a special additive in it. It just doesn't wear out at all. So from the amount that I shoot, I get zero wear from out of my center serving. So I've only got to change it once on that set of strings.
It's because that's one of the things that wears out is you see a lot of them where you've got your loop tied on and in between it, and all of a sudden your center serving is gone. So you take it off, got to cut the loop off and take all that off, put it on again. And you don't need as much center serving as what they do on a lot of them. Now on the recurve, you normally find the center go up 3 inches, down 6 inches because you're hitting your arm. You don't do that with the compound. So you only need enough center serving to put your lube on. You
Yeah.
can move everything else except just a little bit past your loop.
Yeah.
So you don't need all that extra because the only thing the center server is doing is a place to tie your loop and put your knock on.
Yeah.
Not hitting your arm, so you don't need to protect the string from your arm.
Yeah.
Or if you are hitting your arm, your draw link's too long and your form's really bad. So
The only thing I do with my center serving is I like to have it wide enough, because I use the bone-in bow square to find out where the center of my string is. Because that's the other thing that's unique with the Matthews. It's a pure center shot bow. So all you do is just put the bow square straight onto the bow, and you just put it through the burger holes and make sure it's even going through there. And the unique thing with the boning bow square is that they've got a plastic bit that moves up and down on the round shaft, so it's made to look like an arrow. The good thing is
yeah.
while you're adjusting and you're putting your D loop and stuff in, you can move that away. So all I do is I just put a nice black mark where the middle of the string is. So I just put a knock on there, and then tie my knocking points on and just check it afterwards. And the other thing that was also unique on Boning's bow square that a lot of people are aware of is whatever pin knocks you're using, you can put onto that bow square. So it's the perfect fit for whatever you're shooting.
Oh yeah.
And plus it's round as well, the exact same as an arrow. So rather than most of the bow squares where they're flat and parallel, just like a ruler, that doesn't sit very well in an arrow rest. Whereas the boning one is
I have
round
got
like
one of
an
those,
arrow.
but I never use it.
Yeah.
I have a different process that I go through for sending that, because I set the rest where it's at. I use the actual arrow, and I'm going to level my bow, so like the riser is level and the string is plumb, and then I'm going to get all that so it's all lined up. Put my arrow on, and now I'll put it on the string, and I have another level that I put on the tip of the arrow, fastens the arrow out at the tip.
Yeah.
And I'm going to adjust that knock until that's level, because now the riser, it's parallel with the riser now. And then I put my loop on at the top, tie it, and the bottom below, and then I tie them. And if you tie a loop on correctly, it's not going to come off. So
absolutely,
pull them. You don't untie my loops; you cut them off and tie a new one on.
Is that the same as mine?
Yeah. Actually, PSC has a directions on how to tie it.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people that have them on. It's like, why did you tie it that way? Because it doesn't work, and you have the piece looping around. One has to loop one direction, the other loops the other direction. If they don't, they'll have a tendency to roll your string.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
and plus the other mistake,
I don't use that boning square, because I just use levels and when I sent the center shot, I've got a laser that it fastened on where the sight is, and then I turn back and adjust it so it's right in the center of the string. And rotate it out to the tip of the arrow. And you get right at the tip of the arrow, and I'm going to adjust the arrow. Now it's perfectly center shot, perfectly square. It's level and plumb and everything's centered. And I've set bows up that way, and there's really not much you need to do after that.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I've loved about Matthews is that when I set the bow up and I shoot straight through paper, I get a bullet hole virtually straight away. Whereas if you try and do that with Hoyt, I can guarantee you'll be there chasing your tail.
Yeah,
because that bow we're not bullet hole at all.
Well, even before I had went down in training through PSA and stuff, when I got my Matthews, I set it up. Not at that time, I was not an expert at setting up bows. I put everything on, kind of lined it up where I thought. I went down. My first shot with my arrow was a bullet hole. I'm like, cool, okay. But you could take, as you probably know, shooting through paper, you can get a perfect hole, and then you can also make a bad hole with the same bow, same setup, shot everything. The only difference is you got your grip is wrong, you got different pressures, you're doing something different. You can make a bad tear out of a perfectly tuned bow.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I shoot slightly overdrawn. I shoot with a biter rest, so I'm shooting their OD 120, and it's not that much overdrawn, so the blade is just off the back of the shelf. And what I've discovered with the title bow is that it's so forgiving. I can have as much torque I want in there as I want, and the arrow will still land in the middle. It's the only bow I've ever managed to actually tune like that, and that's done by accidentally by me just having that overdraw in the right place to go with, to start with. It's just that was just a fluke when I first did that. But that's one thing I take from my bow setup and from the title is that it gives me confidence shot after shot. Because where that sight is, that's where the arrow lands, and that just gives me. I've never had so much confidence in my shooting abilities as I have now. So I'm really, really looking forward to this outdoor season.
Yeah, that's the key. Like you just said, if you have confidence in your equipment, that's the key to your equipment's set up, you can shoot it, you have the confidence, and you're not doubting yourself. That doubt that's
Exactly.
in your mind is like, okay, is this set up right? Is it not set up right? And
Yeah.
that's I've talked to a couple archers that they don't work on their own equipment. That somebody they know does a perfect job for them, have them set up exactly what they want. Because what they think is, okay, if they make a bad shot, they're thinking, okay, did I set the bow up right? Or did I forget something? I messed something up. That just takes that part of the equation out. They say, okay, it's perfectly set up because, whoever their tech is, they know they set it up. It's perfectly set up for them every time. Not a bow problem, it's their problem. So now the next, okay, now is what did I do different on this shot that messed it up?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you said, you're an engineer and I'm an engineer. So it's like, no, I want to make sure it's the way I want it.
Exactly. But the amount of effort I put into building my arrows. I've got my own arrow spiner. I was sponsored by Victory back in 2017, but I'm not anymore. I'm now using Skylon arrows, and they are phenomenal arrows for their price. But I still like to spine them, so I mark where the stiff part of the spine is. So that's where my cocking fletch goes. Because people that do bare shaft tuning, that's all they're doing. They're just trying to find where that stiff spot of the arrow shaft is, and they will spend an hour, maybe or more, trying to find that part of the arrow where I can do it within seconds. And that's how I do my arrows, and also then weigh all the shafts and weigh all my points so that my heavy points go in my light shafts and my heavy shafts go with my light points, so that every single arrow is as near as damn it as I can to each other.
I did that once when we had shooting aluminums. I was shooting the
Yeah.
78s, which is a 1,500 straightness. Yeah, it's I always shoot the straightest shafts I can get. Now with carbons,
Yeah.
1,000s, but that was the best you could get. And I did the same thing. I fletched them, had to knock on, and I weighed the arrow. I wrote on there what the arrow weighed, and then the inserts all weigh pretty much almost exactly the same weight. And to stop, I order my tips in a 100 bag. I take and I'd weigh them all, and I did the same thing. I'm weighing the tips and lining them up, and then I got my whole dozen within a half a grain of each other, and I'm taking on some of them to get that perfect weight. I'm filing the back of the insert. So there's this piece in the back. I'm filing the back of that down. Got them all. I spent a lot of time working on those arrows. Get them all identical in weight.
Yeah.
Once, for hunting distance, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I only did it once. I haven't done it since. I did take PSE come out what they called the hunter shaft when I had the store. It was a 7,000 straightness.
Yeah.
So I ordered some in just to see what they were like. And where I can take my broadheads and I can hit X's with my broadhead with my regular shafts. Those I keep in the white. That's the best I could do with those. On the 5-spot. So I couldn't put in the X, but at least I'm, within, 3 or 4 inches. And I ordered, PSE goes 1, 2, 3, and 4. The higher numbers, the stepper spine. Well, there are 300s, but they're actually 400, so they're a heavier shaft.
Yeah.
So I'm weighing them. I was like, what's going on? So I found out that they were there, and I hunted with those for a while. And then when I'm trying to replace them, now I've got real 300 shafts, which are lighter, and I had some weight tubes. So now I'm adding weight tubes to my new hunting arrows to get the same weight, because I didn't want to go through and change all my pins.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're set up. Everything all set up. So I weight them down, make sure they the same weight, and if I go through those, then I'm gonna have to redo my pins. But until then, I don't have to.
Yes, the only thing that I go through a lot as a target archer is the knock pins. They're the only thing I don't really weigh because they're mainly virtually weigh all the same anyway.
Yeah,
From the manufacturer. So the only things that I really concentrate on is the shaft weight and the point weight primarily for myself. And I glue my fletchings directly onto the carbon. I don't have arrow wraps going right to the end of my arrows. So I shoot with what they call mini wraps. So my name's on there and the arrow numbers on there because I've got to have that for World Archery rules. But my fletchings themselves are bonded straight to the carbon shaft because I want to make sure that those fletchings are glued as tight as I can possibly get them without having to fear of them coming loose. And what I found discovered with when I only shoot boning vanes, I don't shoot any other manufacturers' vanes, just because I know that every single vane is been washed. It's already got the primer on there. So as soon as I put the glue on there and glue it to the shaft, it's just is a zero fuss. So it's much quicker for myself to do. And I've used their and they call it Fuse, their new glue. I've been using that, and it's slightly more rubberized than their Ultra Bond, their Blazer Bond. So for target archery, I just prefer to use their latest adhesive that they bought out. One of the main reasons why I always stuck with boning is that I've never been disappointed with any of their vanes that come out. They're all spot on. There's hardly any manufacturer defaults with them whatsoever. I do shoot their nocks as well. I used to shoot biter nocks because a lot of competition archers just shoot biter nocks, but they're so damn expensive. Even for myself, I'm sponsored by Biter, but I only get 50% off. But since I've been using the boning smooth release pins, I've had no problems with them. I keep shooting. I don't even change them. I keep shooting them until one of the tips breaks off. They are that consistent. And as soon as that fractures off, I just put a fresh one on there, and they don't move at all in the target. So you're still getting exactly the same release off your string, and I can get thousands of shot out of each knock. So I'm not spending an absolute fortune at all on knocks whatsoever. Because boning shoot them to destruction themselves at their factory. That's what you're taking away with boning, is that everything that they produce, anything new, has been rigorously tested in their factory. And I know Larry very, very well, who's the CEO of Boning. And he's nicely put me back onto the Boning Pro staff just purely because of my beliefs in his product. And it's the only reason why I shoot with it is I know I can rely on it, because that's what I need to be able to do.
Yeah, if you can't rely on your fletchings being consistent, that I've had some where I've fletched up a dozen arrows and target they fly just fine. They're no problem. Put the broadhead on it, and I've had some that no matter what I did, because I always tune my broadheads in it, no matter what I did, this arrow would not fly with a broadhead on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's not a hunting arrow. Not use it for target. It's just something about the fletch. Now I use feathers. And I do wraps kind of like what you said. I don't like the fletch on top of my wrap because if I do change feathers or cut them off, I'm cutting the wrap. So this is how I do them. This happens to be my son's arrow. He shoots the gold tip traditions, so it looks like but the white reflective wrap is nice when you're out hunting, because you can see it with a flashlight. It just glows. And 4-inch feathers, I've been shooting 4-inch feathers. Well, I don't know if I've never set up a set of arrows for myself with vanes, and I started shooting in the 60s.
Okay.
So I've been shooting feathers for 60 years, and I just like them. If I get out and it's a little rainy or misty, well, and the arrow I have on my bow, the feathers start disappearing a little bit, I'll just pull it out and I'll switch for one of them that's still dry.
Yeah.
So I don't like to hunt in the rain anyway. It's hard to blood trail in the rain.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
There you're trying to follow mud prints. If you have mud prints
Yeah.
going through grass, yeah, it's just not my idea of a perfect hunt to hunt when it's raining.
Yeah. It's like the other reason why I like boning so much is that with their blazer bond and with their blazer veins that they use for hunting, is that once you've glued those veins on your shaft, I can guarantee you, if you have a pass through, those fletchings will still be attached. Because even if you just wait 20 seconds after you put that on there, I can guarantee you, if you get a pair of pliers and try and pull that vein off, it will rip the vein rather than it coming off the shaft.
Yeah, that is one nice thing about the veins is they with that coating on the primer on there, once you stick them on, they're on there, you got to cut them off, and that just makes it a lot nicer. You don't have to worry about them coming off. And when I do feathers, when I glue them on, I use Fletch Tight too. So what I use works on wood and carbon and aluminum and everything else. And then I'll put a drop of glue on each end of the feather, because there's always a little ridge. I don't that way I have something to protect that edge, because if you catch that edge, then it starts ripping the fletching off. And but veins is, it's so small that it really doesn't do you much good to put a drop on there, because it's just so close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's I just kind of brought up Boning's website here, and so we can find something on feathers. And they've got some decent fletching jigs too. I like the Bitzenberger Fletchers.
Yeah.
I think they're the best ones as far as I'm concerned. They're the best fletching jigs. There're just so many options with them too. And
I use the Last Chance Master Pro.
Yeah.
And it's very expensive. But the main reason why I shoot with it is I actually shoot with a 5-degree helix on my fletchings. And the thing that I love about the Last Chance is that it's got 2 wires. So those wires follow the contour of the arrow, so it's a perfect helix. And it's the only fletching jig on the market that's like it. And the other thing I like about the Last Chance jig is that you have a bit that goes on the end of the arrow, so your nock is pulled in perfectly and it doesn't move. So every single fletching you put on there, it's in exactly the right in the same location each and every single time.
Yeah.
So if I lose a fletching, I no longer have to defletch the whole arrow and restart from scratch. All I'm doing is replacing one vein each time. Yeah, because the fletching jig is that accurate, but it costs a lot of money. It's not the cheapest fletching jig out there at all.
No, they're not. Well, the Bitzenberger last I seen was 100 and something for the Bitzenberger.
Yeah. I think for the Last Chance, you're looking at about $400 ish.
Yeah, it's you can spend a lot of money on this stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I bought it, is just purely for the accuracy for competition archery shooting. If I was doing hunting, I wouldn't necessarily. I just use one of Boning's normal jigs, which would be more than good enough to put fletchings onto a shaft for hunting purposes. But I want to make sure that everything is done to the 100th degree as best as I could possibly put it on there, and that jig just allows me to do that.
Yeah, and when I had the shop, I wouldn't refletch one fletching. I'd always did all 3. The price is the same whether I did 1 or all 3, because if I do 1 and it's not used on the same jig, so I just always, if it's a good one, I'd cut them off, because I couldn't be sure I was going to line them up.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure which jig, because I had 12 BPE jigs, they're all plastic, and I had 8 Bitzenbergers, and a jump can would hold 6. So which jig was it made on? don't know. I don't care, because I'm refletching the whole thing. And I've still got some of my BPEs left, like 4 or 5 of those, but I got 8 Bitzenbergers still. And I have the straight clamp, the Hickle clamp, and then the 2 different receiver types. And,
Yeah.
So when I do them, sometimes if I'm not doing much, I'll just do one at a time. But normally I'll grab my jigs and do, half a dozen or 8 of them at a time and just get them done and fletched. And, I'm not trying to hold everything to a half-inch circle at 30 yards, 40 yards. I'm hunting at 20 yards or less normally. So they don't have to be that accurate. My engineering mind, I want them to be that accurate. So that's why I shoot my broadheads, and if I can't hit an X with the broadhead, then I don't hunt with it.
Yeah. It's
And
like a lot of people
fixed. So
it's like a lot of people who watch me, shoot. Their remark when they see my arrows, wow, those fleshings are close to the back of the shaft. Aren't you getting face contact? And I went, no, because I am able to. My knocking point is directly where it should be, below my eye, in line, straight in line with the back of the arrow. I said, so no, they're not. I'm not getting any face contact with them whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's the key. If you're actually, I created a video one time on setting up P-pipe. Just if you got to figure out your anchor point. And you got to get how you want. And then if you can't see it, I've had them sometimes where I'm crunching down and then up too high. And you listen to, when you're first starting out, and don't listen to everybody because everyone's going to tell a different story. And I was trying to feel comfortable. And then finally, after I went through, learned how to shoot, I went through NFA shooting school and instructor school back in 95. And, it's like, okay, here's how you set it up. Here's how you do all that. And now then you come back, and I tell, when I'm getting ready to set it up, I says, draw back, eyes closed, finger off the trigger, of course. And now then open your eyes. Can you see through the peat? No. Well, we need to move it and move it till you can see through the peat. If you can see through the peat, yep, okay, that's where it's supposed to be. Because you've got your form and your anchor point, and if you open your eyes and you can't see, then you need to move it, because otherwise people just kind of, okay, moving around, whatever you want to do right there. And I did the same thing when I was on the rifle team. I shot in high school on the rifle team, and we would sit there, we'd get our form, we'd breathe in with our eyes closed, breathe out, open our eyes. If we're not lined up on the target, we might shift our knee just a half inch, or shift our elbow, or just shift something until you can breathe in and breathe out. And then open your eyes and you're on target. Then the next time you breathe in, breathe out, and that's when you start your squeezing your trigger. So that gives you where you're at, where you're relaxed. And the same thing in archery. You want to do whatever your breathing technique is, which you've got to process all down. Where you're at a certain point, you start pushing, and then you go through and pull through. But you got to do it the same every time. And that's where you've kind of perfected that a little bit. So what is kind of your shot process when you go through, from the first time you grab your bow to your barrel releases?
Well, for me, it's a little bit more complicated than a normal able-bodied archer, because I shoot with a shoulder harness. So my bow is resting in my lap, if you like. My long rod's on the floor. So I hold my bow with my right hand, which I've still got used to my hand, so I can still keep the bow steady. So I then draw the arrow with my left hand. I knock that onto the bow. I then lift the bow up and again keep it steady with my right hand while I am arming my release aid and put that through the D loop. I then just look at the target, take one deep breath in, push the bow out, and draw into the bow. And then I come up onto target, where a lot of coaches will tell you to draw up and then come down to the target. But I can't do that, so I have to come up from the bottom. Is that the same as a rifle shooter would in prone? So I come up from underneath, and then just focus on the target, and then the shot just breaks. That's what I'm. That's my shot process. So the other thing I have to make sure is that my hand's in a constant place on the bow, because I can't place my hand on a bow like an able-bodied archer would. So I don't have my arms, so I can pull the bow back. So my bow arm is already straight. I can't do that. My bow arm is here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I use my right shoulder. So as I'm going to draw, I actually bring my right shoulder around and then draw. So I'm using my strong muscles to be able to draw the bow. But if my hand's not in the correct place each and every single time, that causes issues. But with these new titles that I'm using, I've gone to their side plates, so the back of the bow grip's a lot smaller, and I'm able to get my bow hand into a much more consistent place. So you know, it's just the way that I shoot is completely different to what other people shoot like. It's just one of my unique characteristics of shooting with a shoulder harness.
Yeah, but you have a consistent process that you go through every time.
Oh, absolutely. And also my Mantis helps me as well, so that will help identify if I've got slight errors. And what I've noticed myself doing now, rather than looking at how steady my shot is, I'll actually put it up so I have a green spot on there. And what I'm trying to see is, after my arrow's gone, is I have a little dot, and that's all I want to see in the middle there. I don't want to see any lines coming out of that. That just means that my shot's broken in a perfectly straight line. So that's what I'm trying to do, is get more and more consistent shots. And the more I do that, exactly the same as rifle or Olympic or Paralympic rifle shooters use scat. They're looking for, make sure that all those lines on their graph, shot after shot, is all identical. And on my shot release, those lines are so close together now. There's almost like what was one line on the graph. So well, I can see that from that my shot process is working as intended. Because that's all we're trying to do, is repeat the same shot 72 times. It's only one shot we're shooting. We're not shooting 72 arrows. It's one shot repeated 72 times.
Yeah, that's definitely, you want to be consistent.
Absolutely. But it's exactly the same in archery. Electronic training aids haven't been around for that long. Mantis is one of the ones that I recommend because it communicates with its app extremely well. I've not had any problems with it whatsoever. I know that Matthews are now bought out their new one as well. But the only one I have concerns with that is that it's permanently mounted inside the bow grip. It's all right for ATAs, but in Underworld Archery rules, we're not allowed anything electronic on our bow. So you have to remove it each time for competition.
Oh, yeah, you want to have something that you can, put on when you want to use it and not have to worry about this is something.
Exactly.
Oh.
And that's one thing that the Mantis allows me to do. Now that I've moved my sight into the center of my bow through the bridge lock, I now have a free screw hole available where I've put a bit of Picatinny rail to take my Mantis. So it now has a nice solid mounting position on my bow, so I can easily take it on and off whenever I need to use it, or don't need to use it when I'm in competition.
Yeah, I actually brought up the website for Mantis. It's actually mantisx.com.
Yeah.
I forgot the X in it one time. It's like, no, that's not the right site. So let's just show, let everybody see what we're talking about. It's kind of designed for dry firing on guns or even live fire. But
yeah,
you can definitely adapt it to archery.
They do the X8 and the X10 for archery. I believe the X8 is $160 and the X10 is $300. But they make an app for archery. I think it's if you just put in Mantis Archery, it'll actually come up.
Yeah, let's just look bring up another one here. We can bring this up and look at the archery one.
It's exactly the same sensor. It's just that they've just utilized it to go on the bow.
Yeah. There's the Mantis X8.
Yeah.
Designed for archery. Looks like it
Yeah.
fastens on. You can fasten it on where your quiver would mount.
That's correct. Yeah, that
here.
you can either stick it on or you can actually screw it on. It's just a piece of Picatinny rail that it it clips onto.
Yeah, that'd be some really good training aids.
That's what they brought out for. They have
yeah.
a bit on there where you can actually analyze the shot. So if you're getting outside of the target area, you can actually click on that, and it tells you what you potentially done wrong, so you can correct it.
I can see that'd be a good training aid. You know, when you're coaching somebody,
Yeah.
you know, to put it on there and see through and help analyze it, because you only do so much by watching their video of them shooting.
Absolutely. But with that, you can actually see what's actually going on. The other thing that I like about it, because I'm actually going to be working with Archery GB here in the UK with with one of their head coaches. He's the one that trains the other coaches, if you like. He wants me to work with him to teach him about Mantis, because it's only £160 here in the UK. Whereas when I was doing shooting, if I shot with scat, you're looking at £1,000. So the price difference alone, £160 is much more affordable. There's that same sort of thing. The other thing that I like about it from a coaching perspective, if your athlete is away at home training, you can actually see what he's done. And you can't fake it.
Yeah.
So you can actually see and make sure that he's training and doing what he's supposed to be doing. But plus you can actually see in what areas potentially he needs to work on. So you can then give him feedback to help him move on as well. So it's a two-way tool for a coach. They can actually coach a lot better from a distance, so they haven't got to see the athlete week in, week out. They can work away from home from each other, and he can still see what the athlete's doing and seeing what improvements he needs to make to his shooting form.
Yeah, it makes your time with the coach a little bit more efficient.
Yes.
Because you've got, you know, either you record videos and then you're analyzing the video, but this here, it gives you all the detail, you know, exactly what's going on, you know, in the video. Because I've done it. I've coached by watching their videos and give them pointers, and, you know, I've helped a lot of archers out that way. But you know, it's just one of those things that if you have all this information right at your fingertips, and, you know, that's definitely a lot you can do, help train yourself, because you can look at it and say, okay, what am I doing wrong? And yeah, I just brought up the buy now. Mantis X8 is $109.99, $150 US.
Yeah.
So that's
which I feel for what it is, it's extremely good value for money.
Right. Yeah. And then you can have all kinds of information right at your fingertips. I may have to get one of those here when I get shooting back here again, and you know, help my form get better. And
there's one of the features that you got on there is you can actually play your shot, so you can see your bow moving around, and it also detects when your arrow has been released, and it can see it all going down towards the target. It's quite, you know, with all your movement you're doing, you know, during that shot, you can actually see. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to working with Archery GB is that I've not used on a recurve bow yet. Because the other thing you can do, you can actually switch it on so it can detect the clicker. And I think what that will do will also show you their reaction time before the shot is released, from the clicker activating and that shot being released. So it really will help them to coordinate a lot better with their clicker as well. So it really helped the recurve archer to perform a lot better, potentially.
Yeah, when you come back and that clicker goes off, then you know you're at full draw, and then how much you pulling past that before you release. So then that's going to make a difference, just like your short. Because, you know, recurve, the further you pull it back, the more weight you put in it.
Yeah.
And you're going to send your arrow faster this time, slower the next time. And being consistent with how long after the clicker
and then release.
The release go.
Yeah. And plus, you'll also be able to see straight away with a recurve if they're shooting far too much poundage on their fingers, because it will show up with vibration. There'll be no getting, the archer saying, "Oh no, I'm absolutely fine." You can actually see there in real time that he's shooting with far too much poundage for a level that he is at that particular time.
Because your hand is too much weight, your hand's going to start shaking a little bit because you got so
Exactly. And that will show up straight away on the Mantis. There'll be no faking any of the bits that the archer makes mistakes on.
That's pretty cool. I'd heard it. I checked them out a little bit. I looked at them, but I didn't really do anything with them. And now, it's kind of nice talking to you about it a little bit more, using it and how you're using it. And
Oh, well, I've been using mine now for over a year. I've actually got 2 of them because they did sponsor me as well, purely from my background from shooting with a scat, and I can purely see the advantages of having it. It's not a silver bullet, so for those people that think it's going to be a shortcut to becoming a really top quality archer, it's not that easy. You still need to have a coach that knows what they're looking at to help you to pick out the finer points of your shooting for you to improve that way.
If you don't know what you're looking at, you can't use it to solve it. If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you don't know where to look and what to look for.
Absolutely. My battery's running a bit low, Roy, I'm afraid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's been great talking to you. Some interesting stories. Learn some stuff about the new Matthews bows that I didn't know, and like I said, I'm kind of afraid to go shoot one because I'm going to want one. That's the problem. You shoot a nice shooting bow, you're going to want it.
Yeah. Well, the only thing from a hunting perspective is that the bow is so quiet, and that's what you want when you hunt. You don't want any extra noise coming from your bow at the end of the day. And because of that membrane that's in the limbs, there's zero, vibration for the animal to hear. And you see with a lot of them that setting up the lift, that's one of the things they remark on compared to any other hunting bow, is how quiet the Matthews is. There's nothing else out there that is that quiet.
Yeah, something, if you're looking at getting a high-end bow, that's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely going to be something to look for when you go out. And the only thing I can say is go try them. You might not want to get a Matthews, you want to get a different one. So go try them. Go shoot them. If you're looking for a
absolutely
bow, try what's in your budget. If you got X amount of dollars to spend on a bow, then go look at bows that fit in your budget. Don't shoot the higher ones unless there's chance of doing it. But lots of I look at it as like, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of money for a bow.
Yeah.
And then I go shoot one that's in that X, and then I got one that's X plus some amount. So now then I look at, okay, is this bow that extra amount, is it worth that much more? And if the answer is yes, buy it.
Yeah.
You can't tell that much worth, if it's $100 more for this other bow and you don't see any difference in it, you can't tell any difference why it's $100 more, buy the cheaper one.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you can see, oh man, this is a whole lot better, spend the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're going to spend it once and like I say, spend it once and cry once, or go cheap and cry twice.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, I actually won't be looking at buying any new bows from now on. I mean, the title gives me everything that I want from a competition bow from that perspective. It's fast, it's extremely quiet, and it gives me the feel that I want from the shot, to allow me to shoot at my best and give me the confidence that I need as a competition athlete. And it's how all the Matthews bows I've shot, I can see the journey that Matthews have been through, and they've just really thought outside the box to produce this new bow from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I know all the pro staff shooters all sing its praises, but I'm not one of those people that gets the bow for free. I still have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I can actually truly put my hand on my heart and say the bow is worth every single penny.
And that's good to know.
Yeah,
Well, it's been great talking with you, and I'm sure we'll talk again another time. And
absolutely, Roy.
anybody has any questions for us, get a hold of us. And, we're not that hard to get a hold of.
Yeah,
You can watch this podcast. It's recorded live in Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. You can also watch the video on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. And then the podcast comes out on Spotify on Fridays and Monday mornings at 6 o'clock. And that's on Spotify, as well as you can get at the Audible. It's free to download and listen to on Audible. So go out there, you can listen to it, get a hold of us. We're not hard to get a hold of. So once again, my name's Roy. I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101 with John Walker, our Olympic archer, and good information from us today. And we'll see everybody on the next one. Bye.